right, we're getting a few more details over this. Mohammed Yusuf Abdulkazer, he was the guy behind the shooting in Chattanooga that ultimately claimed 5 servicemen's lives here. A lot is focusing on his travels abroad, particularly to Jordan only last year and a few years before that, Kuwait. If this theme sounds familiar, it should, because in a lot of shootings that have taken place in this country, especially those orchestrated by extreme Muslims, whatever you want to call them, they first involve trips abroad. They first involve contacts abroad. Mike Baker is trying to connect all of that. Mike, what are we to make of that? I mean, we're getting more in the travel itinerary of Abdulkazer here and others like him, but the preview attraction was going abroad. What do you make of that?
Right, yeah, and it's not just with incidents that have happened here in the States. It's over in France, it's in Germany, it's elsewhere around the world. The travel back and forth, the opportunity for the radicalization to take place, possibly on the ground during trips back to the region, to the Middle East, and whether that's in a committed training camp where the individuals travel to in Syria or Iraq, or whether it's just through contact with more radicalized individuals through whatever process. It's an important aspect of this, and that's exactly what the investigators are doing right now. The Jordanians have already mounted their own investigation at our behest, the Kuwaitis as well. And the big question is, look, I mean, some of his friends have stated since the shooting, when he came back from this trip to Jordan for the 6 or 7 months that he was there and elsewhere, possibly in the region, he was, in their words, a different person.
Now, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, and I'm not here to sort of question our authorities and all this, but is there a way we can cross-reference this sort of thing, these kind of travels? I mean, that's got to be a smaller pool than like all travelers, but it's a region you're focused on. It would involve, obviously, profiling because the people you are focusing on who are traveling. And I know that raises all sorts of, politic remarks and all that, but I would think that the pool of potential candidates you're watching is smaller than going through 120 million Americans' phone records.
No, it is, absolutely. Common sense would tell you that, yes, we can establish parameters that would help us identify individuals traveling to that region. Now, is it profiling? Well, sure it is. Do I have a problem with profiling, because it's a pragmatic thing to do? I don't have a problem with it. Look, at a point where the Danes or the Swedes, or not to besmirch our Scandinavian friends, but when they become the terrorist problem, let's profile them. I don't care. We've lost the ability to be realistic in the way that we deal with threats that are staring us in the face.
But Mike, what do you think happens when they do go abroad? And you're right to mention men and women, young women at that, who have been wooed in a way that they hadn't been prior to their either going over there or communicating with people from that neck of the woods. What happens? What is the indoctrination process like? How do they feed off an individual's frustrations? What?
Well, oftentimes they're looking for disaffected, unemployed, easily influenced individuals who have problems. That's the nature of the game. You remember Tamerlan Tsarnaev. Back in 2012, he went for almost half a year out to Dagestan and elsewhere. That became a real focus of that investigation post that tragic attack, because they were looking at the exact same things they're looking at now with Abdulaziz in the Chattanooga shootings, which is, who did he talk to? Who did he associate with, and how? And to what degree was there actually training or some sort of logistical support given to the individual? Now, the family of Abdulaziz in this case is saying, look, it appears as if they're implying he went over to Jordan, spent time with some of his family, I think his grandfather as well, to try to get him out away from some of the trouble that he'd been experiencing. And that may be the case. But what we have to identify is, during the course of that, was there a process? Did people he came in contact with look at Abdulaziz, say, again, here's a perfect target, an individual with troubles, with problems. He's got a U.S. citizenship, so he's a very attractive individual from their perspective, and they suck him in. Sometimes it's not really an overt process. Sometimes, as with a lot of times when you're recruiting human sources for whatever purpose, it's a slow, subtle process, and eventually you get them turned. And when he came back again, in the words of some of his friends, he was distanced. And that is something that we're having a very hard time with, getting families to self-report on members of their family. You imagine trying to convince a mother to report to the authorities that her son appears to be becoming radicalized. That's a heavy lift.
You know, one thing I noticed in all these cases, we're kind of crunched for time here, he was such a nice guy. You know, you always say, he's such a nice guy. Apparently not. Mike Baker, thank you very, very much, my friend.